Good evening. So where do we go from here? That's the question being asked by both sides of the EU referendum debate as the fallout from last week's vote continues to unravel. Few predicted the magnitude of the turmoil that's resulted. But what are the consequences for real people? Mary Stanley has been touring the region and sends this report.
Luncheon club at the Salvation Army in Southampton with just one topic on the menu. The EU referendum has divided friends here, as a voluntary show of hands reveals. So how many people voted to remain in the EU? How many people voted to leave? And having seen what's happened since Thursday, does anyone now regret that decision? No. So definitely no regrets, despite many blaming the older generation for the Leave result.
It's not our fault. We were pushed into it, really, weren't we? That with common market and what have you, you know. We didn't know what we were letting ourselves in for. We didn't know that they were going to try and rule us, which we don't want.
Does it worry you about all the uncertainty?
Too old to worry about it these days. You know, we've had our life. These young people didn't bother to vote, did they?
I'm really disappointed, and I just don't know where we're going. It just seems a total mess, and I expected that's how it would be.
At the hairdresser's, casual talk of holidays and the weather has gone, replaced by more serious debate.
I voted in because I'm thinking of the future for my grandchildren, and I don't think it's going to be the same.
For the general election, obviously, you have to have an overwhelming majority, and for this, it was a few percent that there was the difference. So I feel like it would be a good idea to have a second referendum.
Debate too in the Polish community, who met together in Brighton for the first time since Thursday's election. The south is home to hundreds of families who moved here when Poland joined the EU in 2004. Many now fear they'll be forced to leave.
Some of them, I suppose, they are a bit scared and just, feel a bit unsafe a little bit.
Many people are talking about it, and I feel like they don't want my family here or the other Polish community.
But Barbara Story, who works for SOS Polonia, a group which gives help and support to migrant workers, voted Leave and believes it's a positive move.
I'm not a traitor. I'm supporting my Polish people, and I'm happy for them to be here and to work together and to grow together in a greater Britain.
The country has changed at alarming speed, but the divisions will take much longer to resolve. Mary Stanley, ITV News.
So the question we're all asking is there a plan for the future? David Cameron told the House of Commons this afternoon that the best brains in Whitehall are going to get together to come up with one.
The Cabinet met this morning and agreed the creation of a new EU unit in Whitehall. This will bring together officials and policy expertise from across the Cabinet Office, Treasury, Foreign Office and business departments. Clearly, this will be the most complex and most important task that the British civil service has undertaken in decades.
It does appear that neither wing of the Tory government has an exit plan, which is why we're insisting that the Labour Party be fully engaged in the negotiations that lie ahead.
Well, as the Prime Minister said, the Cabinet met this morning for the very first time since the referendum. Our political correspondent Phil Hornby listened to what was said and gave this reaction.
This was the day things were supposed to get back to normal, but it won't be business as usual here for quite a while. A Tory government drifting along with a lame duck Prime Minister, an official opposition party disintegrating before our eyes, the referendum winners in search of a plan they can agree on. The big, unanswerable question everyone's asking, what on earth happens next?
We need to just stand back, take time, cool heads, because nothing's going to happen in a hurry.
There's so many different ways of doing it. But
is it going to be as bad as people like you were saying during the campaign?
I never said it was going to be bad. I've always run a very positive campaign. But it's not going to be easy. There's no doubt about it. It's not just going to be straightforward. We've got to decide which, and also it's up to the EU, of course, to decide whether they want, which bits they want us to be involved in.
Meanwhile, the Labour Party melts down and the South's most senior Labour MP says time is now up for Jeremy Corbyn.
As far as Parliament is concerned, I think Jeremy's position is quite untenable. There is clearly a position now where Most of the shadow cabinet have resigned, and there clearly is not a great deal of support for Jeremy continuing as leader in the parliamentary party. But of course it's more complicated than that because he's leader of the Labour Party in the country.
So Labour could end up having two leaders. But if you think that's going to be tricky, it'll be a piece of cake compared to the job facing the new Tory leader, the new Prime Minister. You keep referring to the next leader as a he. Could it be
or
a she?
Or she.
Could be a she.
Very possibly she. It could well be a she.
In other words, it could be the Home Secretary Theresa May. Tory MPs queuing up today to back her to stop Boris Johnson.
Well, the decision on whether Heathrow or Gatwick will get another runway is now up in the air once again as a result of the Brexit vote. The government was due to decide next month, but a decision is now not expected until the autumn at the very earliest. Campaigners living under the flight path said they're delighted with the delay, as our transport correspondent Mike Pearce explains.
For those under the flight path, uncertainty remains. A decision expected next week on a new runway at Gatwick or Heathrow is almost certainly off until we get a new Prime Minister. Front-runners Boris Johnson and Theresa May oppose Heathrow. Boris is not keen on Gatwick, although Mrs May's view on the Sussex airport is less clear. But if Boris does get in, he could well order a new review of his island airport in the Thames estuary. He's also known to favour Stansted as an alternative.
I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Boris Island back on the agenda as a result of this vote, or if not Boris Island, certainly an expanded Stansted, because Boris Johnson is not keen on either of the options put forward in the Airports Commission report, Heathrow and Gatwick.
While the uncertainty goes on, both airports and campaigners are sticking to their positions.
Well, we don't know when a decision will be forthcoming from government. Whether it's now or whether it's later on, we'll still be ready. We're ready now to press ahead with that development. So whenever the government is ready to make that decision, we're ready to proceed.
We just do not know. It's very difficult to guess what's happening. Would the existing Prime Minister want to make a decision before he leaves, or would that decision be subject, of course, to amendment by whoever is appointed in the future? Very difficult question and not one we can guess.
Well, sadly, it will create yet a further delay, and I say sadly for all parties concerned, because we do need a decision as quickly as possible. In terms of what happens, really will depend on who we see come forward as leader of the Tories.
Meanwhile, low-cost airlines warned today fares could rise or routes cut if we don't keep current agreements with the EU. The poor exchange rate continues, with Gatwick offering £1 for €1 when commission fees are taken into account. While the airports continue to battle their case, we won't have a final decision almost certainly until we get a new Prime Minister. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Heathrow.
And there's much more debate and analysis on this subject on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian. In other news tonight, Hampshire Police has launched a nationwide appeal for a man wanted in connection with a murder in Southampton back in April. £10,000 is being offered for information leading to the arrest of Kevin Suker, who's 23 and from London. Michael Freshwater was found dead at a flat in Westridge Road. Road parking companies have left more than 1,000 cars in a boggy field near Gatwick Airport. The companies have been leaving cars unguarded in the countryside. Hundreds of ignition keys were found in the boot of one unlocked vehicle. Sussex Police and Trading Standards officers are now investigating. And finally tonight, there's a new weapon in the war against potholes on Hampshire roads. A new repair vehicle called the Roadmaster is being trialled. Hampshire Council has been given an extra £1.5 million in funding to fill 30,000 potholes over the next 12 months. Now, what does the weather have in store over the next few days? With all the details tonight, here is Simon Parkin.
From cold fronts to camping, driving through Europe, Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening. Well, you might feel the urge for your bed socks tonight because it's a bit cooler than the last few nights. A lot of clear skies and temperatures down into single figures in some places. Mind you, that does make it a bit more bearable for sleeping. Underneath the clear skies as well, we could see perhaps a bit of patchy mist, but it really won't amount to much. And most of us tomorrow will wake up to a dry and fine start. Some good sunshine to get us going, but fairly quickly from the west, we'll see the clouds start to thicken up. And then the rain will push in during the afternoon. And as it spreads eastwards, expect some tricky conditions if you're driving because some of that rain will be on the heavy side, but it will rattle through pretty quickly.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
And that's all from us. We're back in Good Morning Britain from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. But from me and from all of us here on the Late Team, thanks for staying with us. See you tomorrow. Good night.